Hi everyone, another book review from me, and hope you're all doing well, keeping well, and reading well. So, the book review for me is a book called Bad Blood: Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup, and it's the story of Elizabeth Holmes and the company that she formed called Theranos. And it's written by John Carreyrou, Carreyrou, and this one's published by Picador Books. So Elizabeth Holmes is somebody who, um, I mean, incredibly, she was 19 and dropped out of Stanford University. And basically, from a young age, this incredibly ambitious girl wanted to be a billionaire. And what she wanted to do was basically, her idea was that she was going to invent a product that everybody was going to use and that was going to revolutionize some area of life. And the area she chose was healthcare. So you can see from the cover there that there's a finger there that's holding a little vial of blood, tiny little vial. And her idea was, and she came up with this idea that she was going to create something that out of just a few drops of blood was going to analyze all your blood for all sorts of things. And at the moment, what happens is, when you go to the doctor or the nurse, she'll take a needle and syringe and put it in your vein, take off about 10 mils of blood, then put it into little bottles and send it off to labs. So her idea was that she would create, out of just a few drops of blood, she would put it into a machine that her company had invented, and it would tell you all these things about your blood. And the amazing thing is that what she thought was that not only would it be something that you would get in the doctor's surgery or the hospital, but she'd have it in retail shops, maybe in your local, I don't know, body shop or something like that, or even in your own home. So you'd go into, you'd have a machine in your house and you could check your blood, maybe every day if you wanted to. And also there'd be mobile ones like this, machines that would, that you could maybe have in the battlefield, or the army or the military would have. So, I mean, and if you had created something like that, that would have revolutionized healthcare. Because you imagine if you were able to buy something like that and have that in your house, that would be quite amazing. So she modeled herself on Steve Jobs. She idolized Steve Jobs, and she, for a little while, even started wearing clothes like him. So she'd wear all black, she'd have a little black turtleneck, and she just had these black clothes in her cupboard. Bit like, Einstein had this idea that he would have this, and it was all part of this image of her being this super genius who had created this company. Now, the thing is that this company, she by the end of her 20s, maybe 28, 29, she had created this company called Theranos, which was supposed to be producing this thing, and it was estimated at about $10 billion. And she had half the shares, so she basically owned about $5 billion of stock in this share in this company. So she was technically, she achieved her goal. Now, that would have been great if what she'd actually achieved had something, but the machine, and the picture, I'll show you a picture of the machine. This is what it looked like. It was like a little box. Unfortunately, it never worked. It was nothing more than a malfunctioning prototype. It never got beyond the sort of actual kind of theoretical idea. However, because there were so many people that wanted to get on that train and be part of that, that people were throwing money at her, and the kind of people she had in her company on the board of directors were people like Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, who was the guy that basically engineered the end of the Cold War, people like, what's his name, Rupert Murdoch, who put in something like about $120 million into the company. I mean, so she did all of that along with her partner, who was a guy called Ramesh Balwani. Sometimes we would call him Sunny Balwani, who was actually from Pakistan originally, funnily enough, but then made his money in America and, you know, actually did quite well. Was a software engineer, made about $50 million. But he was kind of involved with Elizabeth Holmes. They kept their relationship secret, but it was kind of like there was something about their relationship that fed off each other, that powered this whole company called Theranos. And, you know, he was like a kind of Svengali-like figure, but idolized Elizabeth Holmes, and she kind of looked up to him. She'd met him in China, where she was learning Mandarin Chinese as part of a scholarship, and he met her there, and they'd sort of continued their relationship, but they kept it secret and under wraps. I mean, it's just it's an incredible story. And what happened was, eventually it got to the point where they created this big company which had something like about 500 people working in it. It was in a place in Silicon Valley, same place where Facebook and Uber and all these things, you know, set up, and even Google. So the idea was she was the next sort of big thing. Everybody wanted to believe that, and also because she was female and she gave off this superstar image, everybody wanted to buy a piece of the dream. Unfortunately, that's what it was. It was all a dream. So this is a book by John Carreyrou, and he was a reporter, investigative reporter, and he basically got a tip off that what was going on in this company wasn't right, that things weren't right, and there were people in this company. It got so big, people just started getting fired left, right, and center. They left the company. One guy even committed suicide because he was so upset about what was happening. So there was lots of things going on. However, you know, people still believed in the company, Theranos, and it's a mixture between therapy and diagnosis. So she called it Theranos. And, you know, all sorts of people. Bill Clinton was like a best pal. Joe Biden went to, and they were all giving her glowing tributes. Oh, you've done so much at such a young age. And it was all bullshit, but she carried it off. She was, you know, she had this personality. Now, if you ever watch Elizabeth Holmes, she started doing things like, you know, putting on a deep voice, so, oh, hello. And she did this because she thought she'd be taken seriously. And actually, she's probably right. And the funny thing is that if she'd sold her company, or if she'd got out of the company maybe 2 or 3 years before, or even a year before, she might have got away with it. She might have had all these billions and got away with it. As it is, at one point the company was worth estimated 10 billion, and the next year it was zero, because the story had broken that this was all a load of rubbish and there was nothing in it. So John Carreyrou was the investigative reporter that broke the story, and he was approached by a couple of people, tried to get evidence, and with these things you have to have some evidence. But there was one lady in particular called Angela, I think her name was Angela Lou, or forgotten now. The reason I mention her is she was quite important. I think her name was Angela. Erica Chung. Erica Chung. So she was a lady who wanted to whistleblow, didn't have the courage at first, because she needed the job. She'd come from a trailer park. She needed, you know, her family lived in a trailer park, so she'd really worked her ass off to get to where she was, and she'd got her degree in biochemistry, whatever it was, and it was working there, but she knew that this was bullshit. Eventually, she left. She got a job somewhere else, and eventually she plucked up the courage and went to this chap, John Carreyrou, and just unleashed everything. And that's what basically set off the whole kind of investigation. So there were lab inspectors that eventually went and wanted to inspect the labs, and they would always do things in the past where if inspectors came around, she would, the Theranos team would just sort of push them somewhere else, or somehow just ignore them, or misdirect them into another place. So this Erica Chung eventually got the inspectors in, and of course when they went in they said, look, nothing's working here, and they shut the labs down and said you can't do anything for 2 years. And then of course in that time everything fell apart, and then everybody realised that there was nothing actually really of value. So in terms of the book, this is very much like, if you like kind of crime thrillers, it's got that feel about it. It's an investigative book where, you know, it shows you the rise of Elizabeth Holmes, and kind of like why she did what she did. She was full of ambition. I mean, like unbelievable ambition, and you know, idolized herself on Steve Jobs, and got there. You know, was helped along with this guy Sunny Balwani, who put in about $20 million initially and things like that. So, you know, it got off the ground, and then people just wanted to be a part of this and just wanted to be part of the next big thing. So it shows you the build-up of that and how people were involved. This guy, George Schultz's nephew, was involved, and he took a lot of personal flack. I mean, even though he was George Schultz's nephew, George Schultz didn't believe in what he was saying, that there was a lot of problems here, and in fact got estranged from his granddad. His parents had to spend something like, I don't know how many millions to keep, they lost their house, things like that. It was crazy, really. He had a lot of personal issues and flack because he stood up and sort of genuinely whistleblowed. So there's all sorts of stories about people like that eventually stood up. There's all the stories about how there's a company called Walgreens, who are like a retail unit, you know, a bit like Tesco, and they wanted to have all these wellness centres, about 100 of them in, you know, and have this machine. None of it came to fruition. So what can I say? It's a really gripping story. I mean, I'd written something, a couple of notes. I said she wasn't mad, but she had an incredibly powerful ambition, idolized Steve Jobs, and after dropping out of Stanford was determined to produce the Steve Jobs, a product that would change the world and make her a billionaire. Unfortunately, she refused to admit the issues and problems with her product, and instead lied and lied, and the lies got bigger and bigger and bigger, and was so huge that other people who should have known better just wanted to jump on that and be part of that train. Anyway, yeah, so it's a case study of manipulation, greed, you know, manipulation, greed, denial. I mean, some of the things on the back, a blistering critique of Silicon Valley. It's no wonder Hollywood is turning this book into a movie. I couldn't put this thriller down. So this is definitely going to be a movie, I'm sure. I think it's going to be starring Jennifer Lawrence, but it's already, I've seen a documentary on Sky, and there's a fantastic HBO series starring, it's called The Dropout. I thought that was fantastic. I remember binge watching that in about 8 sessions, and I discovered that as I was about 3/4 of the way through this book. So that was great, because it kind of, you know, it's sometimes different. You lose yourself in what happened where, who's going to which company, who the FDA is talking to, and you got lost with it. And it was great to see that in a kind of visual representation in this Dropout HBO series. But by the end of the book, the last quarter was fantastic, because you could see the whole thing unraveling, and you could see how people were now panicking, including Elizabeth Holmes, and how she was becoming more and more paranoid. Like towards the end, she would walk around with about 8 bodyguards dressed like something out of the Matrix, you know, black suits and everything, and little earpieces. I mean, you know, people like Rupert Murdoch met her and said, "Why do you need all these bodyguards? I don't need that bodyguards like this, and I'm richer than you." and she would have bulletproof windows in her office and all that kind of thing. People would be getting fired left, right, and centre. They would get their stuff put in a box and just sent out. Everybody would be made to sign NDAs and non-disclosure agreements. So it gets faster and faster as the company gets bigger and bigger. It's harder to keep the lies up, and eventually it all fell apart. I'm reading some of the back plaudits. Gripping, just as Theranos was not just a tech company, its story is not just a tech story, it's a parable with all the usual delicious ingredients of human folly, greed, pride, vanity, lust, anger. And it does definitely read like a crime thriller. It reads like a crime thriller. It's a bit slow getting started, but it kind of just shows you how people just want to believe this success story, and how they can get carried away with something. But I have to admit, with Elizabeth Holmes, with you can see how she wanted to believe her own hype as well. She just believed so much in the project and wanted to be this billionaire that she kind of forgot everything else. Her moral compass went out the window, and I think that's the kind of cautionary tale about these things. Don't lose yourself when you're trying to achieve these goals. I read somewhere that how did people believe all this? And I heard somebody talking about something called the halo effect, where when somebody does really well in something, you want to believe that everything else they do is fantastic. So you believe everything about that they say because they're good in one thing. And she definitely, when you see her, she looks weird actually. She kind of looks weird. But I think it's because she had this act that she was putting on. She couldn't be herself. And even the voice that she'd put on, the clothes. And later on, actually, when you watch the HBO series, you actually kind of feel sorry for her because you think, well, she can now be herself and she's got a couple of kids now. But the downside of it is that what she was doing was something in healthcare, and you can't play with people's lives, but that's what she was doing. There were a few people that had positive HIV results. So imagine if you were somebody that used one of these machines, you got a positive HIV result and you killed yourself, and then you found out, your relatives found out afterwards that the results were actually wrong. There were plenty of people that had basic things that were wrong, like potassium results, which is a bread and butter thing that doctors will get. But she had people who were basically about to die. So these people would have had to be rushed into hospital and everything. And eventually, a lot of the doctors that did use her services realised that there's something wrong here, and they would have to keep using double checking things. Anyway, Bad Blood, Secret. I've gone on for a bit. Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. It's the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, written by John Carreyrou. This one's published by Picador. I think it's a book that you'll enjoy. It's a bit slow at first, figuring out this government agency they've got to go to, and she's got to these other companies are involved in negotiations. That's a bit slow to start with, but then it gets better and better, and you realise that there's that you get to understand the human drama behind it, and it gets much more interesting. And then you realise the cost of it as well. This wasn't just her having producing a good idea and having a company. It had real effects on people's lives, some of which were pretty terrible. Okay, Bad Blood by John Carreyrou. Hope you enjoyed that. Sorry, that went on a wee bit.